Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of How Hollywood Works. I'm your host, Allegra Melloul, and today I'm really excited to have Victoria Asher, also known as VickyT. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So let's just, get right into it.
Yeah.
So, everyone has a moment where they kind of realize what they want to spend the rest of their life doing. What was that moment for you?
I don't think I've ever fully known what I want to do for the rest of my life. I've switched up from being really passionate about music to being really passionate about film. I think those are the two main forces in my life, but I think that there's so many chances for you to, walk into a room and meet someone and find out a whole new thing that you didn't know you were passionate about, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it can totally change depending on what people you're around, or a certain movie you'll see that will be about a topic that you're suddenly like, oh man, I'm totally into that.
Yeah.
So, but I guess, film was always like a kind of constant thing throughout my whole life. So I always knew I wanted to work in film. And then music sidetracked me in a great way. And now music is kind of my priority as well. So, I don't know. It's always switched up a bit.
Do you remember, the first movie you watched that, got you into it?
When I was a little kid, I used to stay up all night long repeatedly watching A Hard Day's Night, to the point where, my mom would fall asleep next to me. My dad would be, at work or whatever, and then he'd, come home, and it'd be 6 in the morning, and I was just watching Hard Day's Night on repeat. So I feel like Hard Day's Night was a big film for me.
That's cool. Yeah. So what were your experiences growing up with film and music?
It was awesome. My dad has worked in music forever. My mom used to work in film, and then she started working in art and collecting art, and never with, money in mind. She just kind of really loved certain pieces and would save up to buy them, and now it's become, kind of a thing to, buy art, but she just bought it because she loved the pieces that she saw. But yeah, we were always there was always many directors, actors, musicians around the house growing up. George Martin actually gave me, who's the producer of the Beatles, if you know who that is. He gave me my first piece of sugar as a kid.
That's so crazy.
So my mom wouldn't allow me to have sugar, and he gave me a piece of cake, and it was downhill from there. But yeah, being around cool, influential people definitely inspired me and kept me on my toes, I guess, and made me want to be like them.
That's cool. So what prompted you to originally choose film over music?
Film was always my number one growing up. I used to film everything around the house. I had a camera with me constantly. Used to make a lot of short films with friends and music videos. And I liked music, but my mom used to make me take piano lessons, and I hated it. I used to literally slam my head on the keys and shout, I don't want to play. So music was not on the top of my list growing up. My dad always worked in music, and I went on tour with my dad a lot, and a lot of musicians that he managed. So I understood that lifestyle, but to me it was all about film. I just wanted to recreate all the films that I was watching, and especially horror always stood out to me, and I really wanted to make horror films. So
that's cool. So you've been part of a lot of film projects. You co-created the opening title sequences for hit shows such as Orange is the New Black. I'm telling you this. They don't know this. And Homeland. You co-produced a short called Billy the Kid. You worked with Robert Downey Jr., who's awesome, for A Guide to Recognizing Your Saints. What was it like working on these shows, and how was it having a different job for each one?
It was great. I think the important thing was kind of seeing all sides of the film business. I even briefly worked at WME for a bit to see kind of the business side, the agency side of film. But I actually feel like I learned more from being on set and working with all different people and seeing the process of how films are made than I did from when I went to NYU. I went to NYU and studied film there, and there's a lot of great things to take away from it, but I learned the most from just being on set. And in particular, I worked for Michel Gondry for a year, and he was just I idolize him like crazy. I think he's a complete genius. So being on set with him and seeing his process was fascinating. But then, being on Guide to Recognizing Your Saints and working with Robert Downey Jr., totally different experience as well. And this director, Ditto Montiel, was on set. It was his first film that he had ever done. He directed it, and maybe I said that already. And Robert was just amazing. Like, he got me that job. I had known him for a long time, and he was awesome in that, like, when I would be doing kind of like the grueling stuff on set of, sitting watching a truck and making sure no one stole anything, he'd come over and lay with me and be like, oh, isn't this the wonderful Hollywood lifestyle? And yeah, people were great. It was just awesome to try out all different things on set.
That's cool. So out of all the roles that you've done in a film production, what's your favorite and why?
I think directing my own stuff is probably my favorite. Orange is the New Black, making that opening title was incredible because it was all ex-con women that we photographed and videotaped. And actually, they're all video stills in the opening title sequence. And if you watch it, there's like a mixture of stills, and then the stills kind of come to life. And we had each woman show 3 different emotions of like, think of your happiest time, think of the time when you got busted and you ended up in jail, and then think about when you got out. And you just saw it in their face, all these different expressions that they went through. And it was a pretty incredible, very moving experience. There was a lot of crying on that set.
Yeah, I mean, the title sequence for Orange is the New Black is like one of my favorites. I actually didn't know you did it until I was like looking into you, and then I saw it and I was like, oh my God, like, of course, this makes so much sense.
And if you look at those hands in the handcuffs, those are mine. We were missing that shot. We forgot to grab that shot, so we had to like go back and reshoot some stuff. So yeah, had handcuffs.
That's so cool. So what's your dream movie to direct? I know you said horror, but what would it be about, and who would you want to star in it?
Well, I have a horror film idea that I am working on, but I'm not going to say it because I don't want someone stealing it. A horror film is my ultimate. To direct a feature horror film is like the dream come true. So I originally I wanted to recreate Fright Night because that was my favorite horror film as a kid. And unfortunately, it already got remade. I didn't think it was that great of a remake. So that dream is gone. That was the original movie that I wanted to direct.
I mean, you could still remake it.
It's true, I could. But it's already been done, damn it.
What would differentiate your horror movies from others that are out today?
Hard to say. I would definitely want to make it more of a psychological film. My personal favorites are the films that aren't necessarily like, you wouldn't think of them necessarily as a horror film, but they somehow totally creep you out and get under your skin, and you find yourself thinking about them afterwards.
Like Split? And
suddenly getting scared of your... no, not so... I mean, actually, I liked Split. I did like that. I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff going on about Polanski right now, but I gotta say, I mean, Rosemary's Baby and this film, The Tenant, which is a Polanski film, are 2 of my favorite films, and they just left me feeling completely creeped out with... I mean, Rosemary Baby is definitely a horror film, but The Tenant, you just feel totally creeped out and uncomfortable the whole time. So that's more my kind of horror film, I think.
Cool. So now transitioning into your music career, you were a member of Cobra Starship for about 10 years. How were you introduced to the band?
So Gabe Saporta found me on MySpace. He was searching for female keyboardists in New York. He came across my page, and he showed my profile to our bass player, and I think the rest of the band, actually. He showed it to the whole band, but my bass player I knew through my boyfriend at the time, and he was like, oh, shit, I know that girl. I can get in touch. Sorry. Oh, poop. I know that girl. I can get in touch with her. So he reached out to me, and then I tried out, and the rest is history. I went on tour thinking, I'll go on tour for like a month, and then I'll get back to film stuff, and it became 10 years, so it's totally crazy.
Yeah. What was it like to transition from film to music?
It was pretty natural, actually. I think just because I grew up around music and grew up around film, it wasn't totally surprising that I ended up in music, and I actually took the same path that my dad did. My dad was going to school in England, and he left school to go to America and tour. So when I called my parents and said, I got asked to join this band, and I think I'm going to leave NYU and go do music, they were like, oh, well, it's the exact same thing that I did. my dad, so it was just really easy. I transitioned very, very gracefully.
So you've released a few singles such as Ghost, Protect This Love, Touch, and more, which are all on iTunes. Promo. Where did you draw inspiration for your songs?
Probably just most of it's all brutal heartbreak that I went through.
Oh.
Which, a lot of times the tragedy is what creates the best art. I wish it wasn't that way. I wish it was like when I'm really happy that I create more, but it's usually the struggles that makes me create more. So Ghost in particular was about revisiting England after breaking up with someone that I was with, and everything just reminded me of them and everything feeling like just devastating. And Touch actually, though, was not. Touch is just like more of a fun kind of lusty song that I wrote with friends, but the majority of them are from heartbreak.
Dang, that sucks. I mean, it's great, but it sucks.
Yeah.
So what's your process for songwritings from the lyrics to the actual music?
I guess, it's different for each song because I work with like a bunch of different people. There's some people that I regularly work with, like this girl, Yantina. Her and I it's effortless when we write music together, and she's awesome, and we'll just kind of back and forth come up with ideas of what we want the song to be about, and it'll just come very easily. But, sometimes I just have like lyric ideas that I've written down, and friends will have like chords or something, some kind of starting of a song, and we'll put the two together, or vice versa. I don't know, it's all kind of random. But I really love the process of getting in a room with different people and just riffing and saying like, oh, like what kind of stuff have you been thinking about lately? Like, oh, I've been dealing with this thing, like, or isn't it frustrating that this thing happens? And it's like, oh, I like that. And then a lot of times you form a metaphor or something and you roll with it. And, yeah.
That's cool. So who did you listen to growing up, and how has that affected the music you create today?
I grew up I've always listened to pretty much everything. I've never stuck like strictly to a genre, but I was a huge Weezer fan, massive. I still am, and it's funny because I'm friends with them now, and I finally keep my cool around them, and they're just friends. But before, when I first met them, it was like true fandom moment. But I also like grew up being obsessed with Marilyn Manson, and No Doubt, and this band Neutral Milk Hotel. A lot of like indie bands mixed with pop bands, and I think kind of joining Cobra Starship, my 14-year-old self probably would have been making fun of me and being like, what the hell, man, you got to stick with the indie crap, like don't give into this pop world. But my music changed a lot as I got older, and I no longer cared of like hunting out the bands that no one knew about, and I just embraced all genres, and joining a pop band was just really fun, and writing pop songs with those guys. And sorry, now I'm like lost on what the question was. What was it?
Who you listened to growing up, and how that's inspired your music today?
I would say over the last couple of years, like I got really into LaRue and Robin. And Robin has been around for a long time, granted, but so those have been like a big source of inspiration. But there's definitely moments of like Weezer guitar parts and things like that coming into music that I'm working on. Yeah. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, you got it. So what are your plans for your career in film and music going forward?
I want to just continue combining them and finding cool ways to do it. And I've been directing a lot of my own music videos, but I just want to collaborate more with other people on different projects. Looking to do more main title sequences, looking to make more short films, and yeah, just finding a way to bring both together. I don't want to just choose one. And I don't think people need to. I mean, I know some people are like, just stay super hyper-focused on one thing. I like to switch it up and find new things that inspire me and excite me and incorporate them into my work.
Like a modern-day Renaissance woman.
Yeah, exactly.
So what advice do you have for younger generations, such as myself, who also want to pursue careers in entertainment and music?
I always just tell people to create. Like, I get so many DMs and stuff on my socials of people asking, like, oh, how do I start doing music? Or like, oh, I really want to make a film, but I'm really insecure. And, oh, I have these, like, lyric ideas, but maybe they're really stupid. And I just say, like, push through the self-critic. You're going to make a lot of bad stuff in the beginning. I'm like, all of us have. And that's part of the process. But if you don't try, then you never get to your goals and you never create the stuff you want to make, you know? Like, there's a learning period of making crap, and then eventually, you know, you kind of understand your own taste and you get better skills, and or you're amazing, you're just great right away. But get rid of the self-critic and just create and create and create.
All right, cool. So
yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, of course, anytime. So that was this week's episode of How Hollywood Works, you guys. Again, I'm Allegra Melloul. This was Victoria Asher, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Bye!